I'm going to take you back quite a ways on this story, so bear with me, folks. I was about 18, maybe 19 years old at the time. I wasn't as bad as a lot of guys I knew my age, but I was pretty rough. I'd been framing full time for a couple of years and was living a typical construction worker's lifestyle. It was work hard and play hard was our attitude back then. Son of my first boss, Wesley, had moved back into town, so he had put him on another house of his own to frame. Well, he sent me up to work with Wes, and we became friends pretty quick. Wes was in the middle of a move back to God at the time. We spent our lunch hour every day sitting in the bed of his truck, eating our lunch, and Wes would read his Bible. Now, I remember I'd bring me a book of my own, or always have something to keep me occupied at the time, anything to keep from asking him any questions about that Bible. I'll be honest with you, that Bible scared me like no man ever could. It called to me and had my curiosity going crazy, but I knew if I started down that road, it would lead me away from the fun I felt like I was having. Wes never pushed God on me, and I always respected him for that. Looking back, I sure wish he had been a little more vocal, but it wasn't my time yet, so it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. Anyway, we had been working up there for quite a few days, and the homeowner was there one day piddling around on some projects. We'd got to know him a little, and he was a really nice fella. He worked out at the paper mill and was a really stand-up family man. We didn't realize it, but he had put an extension ladder against a pine tree and was trying to nail a security light to that tree off of the ladder. If you've been doing construction work very long, well, there's a very distinct sound an aluminum ladder makes if it falls. It's like a magnet when you hear it, and it'll draw the eyes of everyone on a crew instantly. Well, as we turned to that sound, we saw this homeowner falling off that ladder. He had strung a rope around those trees to hang stuff on about 7 feet off the ground. As we watched him fall, he caught that rope on the middle of his body and spun it around it and hit flat on his back. Everything on our hands were dropped without thought, and 3 men ran across that yard as fast as our feet would carry him. As we reached his side, he was convulsing, and it looked like he was having a seizure. We tried to hold him still while we figured out what all the injuries he had. As we watched, he turned blue, gargling, and went totally limp. Thankfully, Wes had taken emergency training. He sent the other hand to the neighbor's house to call an ambulance and had me checking for a pulse while he checked for clogged air passages. Well, I could talk for a while on everything that happened over the next 10 minutes, but basically, Wes did CPR and I checked for a pulse, and we slowly watched this man turn whiter and whiter before our eyes. After 10 minutes, Wes realized he wasn't going to be able to bring this man back. Giving up on his ability to save this man's life, in desperation, he turned from worldly ways to spiritual ways. He laid out over that man and started praying and asking God to save him. His prayers were so heartfelt and emotional it moved me to start praying too. I sat right there and poured my heart out to the Lord. Now, as we were at the height of our prayers, the strangest thing happened. It's hard to put into words exactly what happened that day, but I'll try my best. It was like all of a sudden the air thickened, like a heavy curtain settled over me. There was a sensation of power like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was like sitting in the middle of a thundercloud, feeling all that energy waiting to be released. I heard a gasp and I looked up to see that man drawing a deep breath. It was at that moment I realized my hand was still on that man's wrist, and out of nowhere I felt a strong, steady pulse under my fingers. He started to move slowly. It was like waking up from a deep sleep. Wes started talking to him and reassuring him. Now, it was only 2 or 3 minutes later that the paramedics showed up. They had him loaded up and headed out to the hospital. It was after that we sat down and together ourselves that Wes looked at me and asked if I'd felt that too. We talked about it a little bit, but it was almost beyond description. When we got off that day, I went on home. It had been too much for me. I couldn't cope with any more at that moment. Well, Wes went on up to the hospital to check on him and told me about it the next day. He told me when he walked in that room, his wife and children were in there, and they all looked at him with wide eyes. Upon asking how he was, he said doctors said just a few bumps and bruising, he should be going home in the morning. Then he told Wes the paramedics told him he had just been knocked out for a while and it was no big deal. That's when his voice got serious and he looked at Wes and said, "That's not what happened, is it?" Wes told him, "No, sir, we lost you for right at 10 minutes. Nothing we can do would work." He looked at his wife, who had a wild look in her eyes, and said, "I told you that I died." He told Wes that he was told he had to go back that his family needed him. Now, I haven't told this story too many times over the years because honestly, after a while, I was embarrassed. God had showed himself to me without a doubt that day. I had not only felt his presence, but I'd also seen a healing beyond belief. Yet I never changed my ways. I did my best to forget it because it didn't fit into the life I wanted then. How many times does God knock at our doors and we don't answer? I've been given the call to arms way too many times over the years. For me, I'm done running. It's time for me to tell you what I know of my God. You know my story. You've heard my tale. What you do with it is your business. But I can tell you from personal experience, if you run, the further you run, the harder it gets. I can tell you that my God is real. I ran from him for a long time, and for that I can never make up. I'll do my best to walk his path, and hopefully I can help a few others realize along the way that not only is my God real, he still heals, and he still works miracles. He's starting to gather his children back to him, friend. If you get still and listen, you can hear his voice. Love you all, and God bless.